Someone else. Good evening, North Montgomery community, friends and guests. It's my honor to present Shannon Taylor. 20 years of law enforcement experience, 6 years with the Tippecanoe County Prosecutor's Office, working specifically in digital forensics. Powerful topic to talk with us tonight. Hopefully we can take this information and use it to the best of our ability to keep our kids safe from things that a lot of them have just simply in their pockets. So, turn the stage over to you. Thank you.
I like to pace, so I'm going to take that out. I have worked with just the Tippecanoe County Prosecutor's Office just a short amount of time. I moved back to Indiana. I'm originally from here. I graduated here in '93, and then started my law enforcement career in 2000, and went to the ILEA in 2001, and then I moved to Houston in 2009 after working with Purdue University, and moved back last year after being there for about 14 years. So I was on the Houston Metro Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, which is the first time that I was really exposed pretty deeply into child trafficking and online enticement and the sexting issue with the kids in the schools. And I actually worked for Katy Independent School District. The school districts down there have their own law enforcement agency built in. We had roughly like 39 elementaries, somewhere around 10 to 14 junior highs, and 8 or 9 high schools. And our high schools had about 4,000 kids in them, where we were assigned to a specific school. So we dealt with a wide array of criminal issues going on in there, but a big issue that we were facing was sexting, and what we were going to do with the phones as evidence, and were we going to keep them, and how did we store them as evidence. And then the parents were getting upset because we had an $800 or $900 phone in our possession for sometimes 2 years. So it became a problem, and we'll talk a little bit about more later. So when I joined the Tippecanoe County Prosecutor's Office in January, I was given K9 Roger, and I'll go get him at the end of the presentation. He is an electronic storage sniffing canine, so he sniffs for thumb drives, micro SD cards, laptops, computers, anything that stores evidence. He was trained in Indianapolis, where the trainer trained the dog that ended up finding the evidence for Jared Fogle in the subway case. You guys might remember that. So this dog was trained by the same trainer. He's amazing. He's great to live with. He lives with me every day. And we work every day. So he doesn't have a food bowl in order for him to eat. He's food driven, so he eats out of my hand. He has to find devices in order to eat. And so that's how he works. So if we don't work, he doesn't eat. And so it's a big responsibility. He just turned 3. He's out in the car, so he can't sit in here. You guys wouldn't even pay attention to me at all. Neither would he. So we will go get him a little bit later on. He is sponsored, so a lot of people ask me, like, how does he get paid, or, how do we come by him? He was actually an ICANN dog. He was meant for to lead the blind, but he got kicked out for probably barking, or he likes to eat things in trash cans and stuff. And he is sponsored, so Operation Underground Railroad sponsors him. They do child trafficking, sexual exploitation of children, and they pay for his food, his collars, his leashes, everything. So he just pretty much lives with me for free, and he's on a 5-year contract to work, and he is owned by the Tippecanoe County Prosecutor's Office. So we're here today to talk about child exploitation. It's kind of a lot of material. I'll try to slow myself down because I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. I like to talk a lot, which is on my report card a lot. But it's a very heavy topic. And so the doom and gloom that I see on everybody's faces when you walk out, it's like, oh, that was great. Now I need to go home and be scared to death. But really, it's just information. It's just arming you to prepare yourself for what your kids are actually seeing or being exposed to at a pretty young age. So I am still in Indiana, still part of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and it's probably way more than that now, the 61 coordinated task forces. 5,400 federal agencies put together, and we all come together to do child exploitation cases. So the inception was approximately 25 years ago. It's got over 5,000 law enforcement agencies. Typically, like when I was in Houston and I worked for KDISD, eventually I had done so many cases, they said, okay, well, we will actually grant fund you. So they provided me with an undercover car, they paid for my gas, they gave me a $5,000 training budget a year, and they paid for equipment. So if you work enough cases, they'll pay you to work these kind of cases. So right off the bat, statistics show that roughly half of parents say their child got their own smartphone between the ages of 9 and 11. That's pretty accurate. And coincidentally, the highest, or the age range for kids to be victimized is 9 through 12. So the correlation there is probably not lost. Nearly all parents say their young children have not been harassed or bullied online. That's probably changing. And roughly 6 in 10 say they are very confident their child would tell them if they were being harassed and bullied online. I find that pretty hard to believe. Up to 95% of youth ages 13 through 17 years old report using a social media platform, with more than a third saying they use social media almost constantly. And that is very true. So every time I go and talk to a school, I ask the kids, like, when you go to bed, where do you put your phone? And raise your hand if you put your phone like on your nightstand or right beside your bed, right beside your pillow. And I'd say 50% raise their hand. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the continuous beeping and the alarms that go off and the social media dings and the lighting going up and down, it affects, even though they're asleep, it does affect their brainwave activity. And your body does know that those things are going on, and so it's interrupting their sleep patterns, which is also affecting their mental health. So a lot of parents attend my presentation because they have very specific questions when it comes to applications. And I would say that everything tonight that I'm going to say is not profound, it's just that no one wants to talk about it. And the biggest thing, and you're going to hear me harp, is that you have to learn it. You have to learn it. I can't stand here and teach you Snapchat. I could. It would take me like hours. Because when I first learned it, I had to put it on my phone and I have to use it in order to investigate cases involving Snapchat, or I have to go and read about Snapchat. And Snapchat provides their law enforcement guide online. You can go online and read it. And it tells you how long they keep content and how to use it and where it's stored, and you have to have a special code for the My Eyes Only section, and it pretty much tells you how to use it. It's just that we're busy. We have jobs. And then we come home and we're tired. And then we gotta cook dinner. And then we gotta do homework. And then it's time to go to bed, or we have to go to ball practice. And we don't have time to have the conversations, well, what'd you do at school today? Nothing. Okay, it's time to go to bed. But what they're not telling you is that their friend was bullied, or somebody sent them a nude picture, or somebody asked them, or maybe they were gaming online for 2 hours after school while you're at work, and somebody asked them an inappropriate question, and they just don't think it's a big deal until it is. So my biggest takeaway is we're going to talk about some of the apps, and we're just going to go through them briefly, but these are the major apps that we're seeing on cyber tips. And I work primarily cyber tips and have for the last 6 years. And a cyber tip is a tip that's made online by either a business or the application itself that says, hey, this person is sharing child exploitative material, or this is online solicitation of a minor, or in some way this is inappropriate content involving a minor. Or kids who are involved in it can go online to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they can make the tip themselves. So TikTok We all know that TikTok is not allowed on like government phones anymore, and I think kids are still pretty fascinated with it. The bad things with it are the constant negative comparisons. I think kids see that everybody's life is a good time on TikTok, and they think theirs is not, and so they start to compare themselves. Life-threatening challenges, we all saw the eating of the, I don't know, the spicy stuff, and it makes them sick, and kids go home and they try it, and they don't realize the dangers of it. Having less attention spans, they're just flipping, scrolling constantly. Their attention span's getting smaller and smaller because they're just looking for that feed of positivity, or going through an excitement. So their attention span is less and less. Spreading misinformation. They don't understand that not everything you see is not true. A lot of it is adult content, so they're being exposed to this when they're like 9, 10, hearing words, and they start to use them, or seeing things like that, nudity. And alarming privacy concerns. And I have to talk a lot about this with kids. When they make their own TikToks, or they do it at school, or they do it at home and the numbers are like right behind them in the driveway, or they're wearing their school uniforms and stuff like that. It's very, very easy. I tell the kids to go online and Google a charger. And if I just ask you, where are you from? And you say, Indiana, and just Google Indiana charger, mascot charger. And I could probably narrow it down. Instagram is huge. So it's not just Instagram, it's the direct messaging. So these apps, it's not just like the apps that we're going to talk about, it's the direct messaging feature within the app. That's what you're not seeing. So if you go online and you're looking at your kids and you do check your kids' social media, don't just check their feed. Check their photos and their direct messages, because that's where you're going to see the chats that are happening between them and someone else. So they're getting tagged by maybe strangers in comments, somebody just seeking them out, or they are adding fan accounts to their accounts and allowing access to pictures, and that changes the algorithm. So you guys know, if you have Instagram, that your algorithm changes based on the images that you like, or the videos that you like. It changes your algorithm. It puts more of that in there, more of that in your feed. Spam accounts, fake accounts. Kids don't only have an Instagram, they do have an Instagram, because their parents will say, okay, I want to check your Instagram. Okay, well, this is my Instagram. No. They have another one. It's called a Finstagram, a fake Instagram. That's their Finsta. And they probably have more than one. So that's what we're seeing a lot, is they have multiple accounts. It's just that they're using one to show you, and they're using the other to talk to their friends with. And it's picture motivated. It leads to low self-esteem and mental health issues. Again, I talk to the kids about, nobody puts, their bad day on social media. Nobody takes a picture of themselves like, look, my hair looks like crap today, or my parents can't afford, the super popular clothing line. Nobody goes online and says that stuff. Is they go online when they say, my hair looks really good, look at my makeup, it looks really great, look what my parents bought me, look at my new car, look at this, look at that. And that's what leads to other kids having low self-esteem, thinking they're not worth it, their parents can't afford things like that, that they're not in the same league, they can't go to this party, and then that's what starts the social breakdown. Snapchat is huge. If you haven't heard it before, it is. One of the things that we constantly see with Snap, and that you guys know, is that it's disappearing. You can set how long that those messages will stay for. You can keep those images in your chat sessions. It just depends on how long your settings are for. I tell kids all the time, look, Snapchat is known for disappearing messages, but what you don't know is that they work with law enforcement. So even though you guys are doing school threats or reposting things, that doesn't mean that I don't get that snap from someone else and that I do an exigent circumstance subpoena or some law enforcement paperwork to Snapchat, and they're gonna send it back to me. So even though it disappears, they do work with law enforcement because they have gotten hit really hard out there saying that they're not working with law enforcement and that they're supporting all these bad things that are happening out there with kids. Well, they're trying to spin it around. So all we have to do is issue some paperwork and we get the IP addresses or whatever is tied to that. So the biggest thing for Snap, or two things actually, the My Eyes Only feature, which is a photo vault within Snapchat, basically, and it requires a separate passcode. So while we take up a phone for maybe images floating around or some talk floating around, when we get into Snapchat, we say, okay, well, that's great, but you know, what's your My Eyes Only code? Well, I don't want to give you that. Okay. So then we have to hook it up to some other technology that we have. The other one is the Snap Maps that I constantly have to tell kids to, you don't have to have your Snap Map. Nobody needs to know your location 24/7, unless it's your parents, and if they want to know, they're not going to check your Snap Map. They're going to, you know, they're going to have something else on your phone to track you. They're going to probably have some kind of parental control that's limiting what you're Googling and limiting what you're seeing online too, and also tracking you, which I would highly suggest. But they want their friends to know where they are and that they can see them all the time. The other thing is Snap Cash. We're seeing a lot of money being sent through Snap Cash. I'm seeing a lot of I guess more so in Houston. I haven't seen a couple phones here, but like trafficking going on in Snapchat. Kind of just weirdos offering money for pictures and stuff like that on Snapchat, and it's by location, so your kid doesn't even have to know this person. They can just find them randomly. So Roblox, I don't know if you guys have kids that play Roblox, but a lot of my younger kids play it. And it's where you can, anyone can share games. And most of the games are free, but they also cost like Robux. And so you have to sometimes attach a credit card. So I'd be really leery about attaching a credit card. And two, your kid doesn't know like the value of money. So I've also worked with coworkers where they're like, you're not gonna believe this, but my kid ran up like a $200 bill, like buying these things on gaming. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But the biggest thing with this is the in-game chat. And when I talk to your kids, I always ask them, who plays this game? And the hands go up, because it is a pretty cool game. And they can interact with real-life friends, so they may or may not know them. And then I'll say, well, okay, but how many times have you been playing with someone online and then you get like a chat message? And it's a lot. And they're asking them like, oh, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? Which seems like a normal question, but that's a lot of information for them to give out. And then it becomes, okay, well, you know, if I was a predator, and all predators are where kids are, because that's what they do. Okay, well, I know Bobby is online every day at 4, and he's been online every day at 4 for 3 days, so I'm guessing his parents probably get home around 6. So, and I've noticed that he goes offline every day around 6:30. That means I have X amount of time to play games solely with your kid. And think about how I'm going to get your kid, how am I going to get information out of your kid if I really wanted to. And we can play, they don't care. They can play for a month, they can play for 3 months, 6 months, a year. They do not care. They have all the time in the world. Because the only thing that they're trying to do is gain trust. So if I had a kid that gamed, I would make sure that I was talking to my kid about blocking features. I would also play the game with my kid. So I ask the parents all the time, well, do you play with do you play these games? No, I don't even know what it is. It's just, it's too much for me. It is a lot, but it's also a way for you to connect, and it may also be a way for you to ask the questions or to start a conversation, like, hey, this is weird, like, I didn't even know you could do this in this game. Yeah. Well, has anybody ever, asked you weird questions when you're, playing the game? And it's probably a good conversation starter. A good way for them to talk to you while they're playing the game. So they're not just sitting one-on-one, face-to-face, and they feel like they're going to be punished. And there's also parental controls. So there are parental controls within the game, and you can go in there and block and do different things with the ages of people. Minecraft is another one that we get a lot. And like I said, it starts with a user introducing themselves and having a conversation with them. And suspects will gain your child's trust, ask personal questions, maybe even buy your child items. So I have seen that recently, where they'll be playing a game and this kid doesn't have money or Robux to play the game. So the suspect will go in and say, that's really super cool. I think you're such a good player, you're so cool, that I'm gonna buy this for you. And they think that's awesome. You must be my friend if you're gonna spend money on me. So it's super impressive to them, little things. Most online investigations start with the perpetrator meeting a child on one platform and then asking them to go somewhere else. Usually always. So they'll start playing a game and then they'll say, hey, can you text? Or do you have Instagram? Yeah, I do. Okay, well, that's really cool. Maybe we should be friends there too. And then they'll start direct messaging them there. Discord is another gaming app. It's really popular. I was just at a private high school giving a presentation, and I asked them before on my previous slide, did I leave anything off? And they said, you left off Discord. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So if you just ask kids, hey, these are all the apps that I think you guys are using. Did I miss anything? And they'll say, yeah, you missed, have you ever heard of XYZ? That's pretty cool. We're on that constantly. They want to tell you. They want to tell you what they're doing. They want to tell you what they're using. It's exciting for them. And I ask them. It's a very popular platform for adults and children. So every time I've had an investigation, it's always with an adult. Adult gamers and juvenile gamers. And it's, I read some really bad things on the internet. I was like, okay, well, what could I mention about Discord? This is what it said. Discord's inadequate age verification. No way to verify someone's age. And consistently failing to address extensive content. And it has thousands of private channels. So I worked a case involving a gamer, I think he was in California, who was an adult, and a child that was in Texas. And they had played for a really long time. Even went times where they had played for a super long time, and her parents were gamers. So they even knew that, that this stuff happened. And they had even told her, but she had not told them that she was talking to this person until it was too late, till she had already sent explicit pictures and that stuff had been going on. And then they called and said, okay, we have to talk to the police because we have a feeling that this guy is not a juvenile. And he wasn't. But she didn't tell them, even though, they were close and they all gamed. But she had talked to him for a really long period of time, and then I think her parents took her phone away for a while, so she played on an iPad for a while. And then there was a period of time where they didn't talk to each other at all, and then 3 months later, boom, they went right back in. And when they went right back into the conversation, it started right back where it picked up. So it didn't start all the way back to the beginning, of no trust, it started right back to, hey, I need a picture of you. And that's the other thing that we noticed too, is like when you're taking away your kids' phones, that they're just using somebody else's. And it used to be that we turned phones in to get new phones, but it seems like kids are, like there's extra phones laying around, like in houses, like, oh, we have a spare cell phone. So they're just picking up the spare cell phone and taking it to school and using it on Wi-Fi, or wherever they can on Wi-Fi, or using their friend's phone. Kick, if your kid has this on their phone, I would toss it. Like, this is the worst app they could probably ever have on their phone at this age. I've used this undercover. I know it's awful. There's so much pornography on this app being sent to kids, and no age verification, and literally just anyone could talk to your kid. And there's so many groups that you could go into, and human trafficking on this app, it's just not good. It used to be overseas, so all their servers were overseas, and they wouldn't even deal with law enforcement, but now they're in California, so now they have to. So now they have to respond to our paperwork and stuff like that. It's free. It claims its users utilize this app to chat with friends and connect with brands and games and media, but it lets you be anonymous, and it lets you literally connect to anyone, and it doesn't matter the age. And it has high rates of sexually explicit interactions amongst its users between adult and minors. Just briefly, we'll talk about hidden applications or photo vaults. So if you ever see like a photo vault on your kid's phone, or a locked folder, or a hidden, like a calculator, just if your kid has two calculators on their phone, one of them is a real calculator and one of them is fake. It will act like a real calculator until you put in the code that they set, and then it'll open up a photo vault. So that's very popular. I've seen both hidden folders and things like that. So when you look at your kids' cell phone, don't just look at it face value. Click on the apps, open them, try to open them, see if they work, see why they have two of something if they do. So I talked a little bit about like online enticement or online grooming is huge, developing trust in a relationship. I said it doesn't matter where they talk to them for a week or a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year, they do not care. And they're not just talking to your kid, they're talking to like everybody's. They're not just honing in on one, they have a lot. And because that's what they do. Usually when we go and if somebody ends up getting arrested, or it's that type of investigation, usually the forensics end up showing, they just don't have one victim, they have like 20 or 30. And so you end up getting images from like all over the United States, and then having to contact those police agencies as well. And it takes a second to say hello or start a conversation. A second. Just for me to be like, hey, or wave, like emojis, that's another thing. Like now we don't even have to talk, we can just send emojis. And certain emojis mean certain things. So if you see like emojis in your kid's conversation, ask them like, that's really weird, like what does that mean? And sometimes they mean different things, and maybe your kid doesn't, maybe it means something specific to them, or maybe it means something specific to the little group that they're hanging out in, and just ask them. And child predators are on the same apps as your kids are on. I mean, if I'm a hunter, I'm going to go into the woods. I'm not going to be on the street. So if I like kids, I'm going to go where the kids are. They're on apps. They're on games. Children have a disconnect with the internet, and they don't realize it's really dangerous. They don't think, some of them don't think, somebody's going to drive from California here to pick them up. They will. So online enticement, pretending to be younger. I worked a case where it was an adult and a child, and I asked the boy at the time, he's about 12, I said, well, did you ever try to call him? Did you ever try to FaceTime? Because we FaceTime. And he's like, yeah, I tried to do Google Hangouts. They were on Google Hangouts, and then I tried to call him. Well, how many times? Kind of a lot. I'm like, well, did he ever answer? No, he didn't. I'm like, he didn't because he's not your age. He's an adult. And if he would have answered, you would have known that he was an adult. Or they'll just answer with voice, and they'll just be very brief, and you'll hear a few noises or a dog bark or something like that, and they'll hang up and they'll say, I have a bad connection. Asking to mutually exchange images. They always get the child to, if you send me an image, I'll send you one. If you send me a picture, I'll send you one. Well, they'll get the kid to send an image, and then, I can't. My phone, I don't have any internet, something happened, I don't look good today, you probably won't think I'm handsome, or you won't think I'm good looking, I just don't, I'm not feeling it today. They already got you. Offering something in exchange for images, and I know that sounds really far-fetched, like for girls, it's clothing or money, or now the big thing is like, I'll just give you money so you can get food, like Grubhub and like all that. Kids are doing that. And predators are out there like, where are your parents? Well, they're busy or whatever. Did you eat dinner tonight? Because if not, then I can order you some food, or I can get you money and you can order yourself some food. Develops a positive rapport with your child. It's more so like, I just can't talk to my parents, like I just don't think they'll understand me. I think I'll probably get in trouble, or I'll get grounded, or they'll take my cell phone away, and then I won't be able to talk to you anymore. Well, that's okay because I'm your friend, and you can trust me. I'm probably the only person that you can talk to. And I won't tell anybody, I won't tell your secret. It'll just be between you and me. And we can be best friends forever. And I'll tell you something about me so you feel comfortable about telling me something about you. Engages in role play type scenarios or sexual conversations. I see that a lot in gaming, and it doesn't just go there real quickly. It kind of just gradually goes there, and then usually it starts there before the pictures start. In chat rooms and online forums, child predators are now teaching each other the tricks of the trade: how to target kids, how to groom them, and how to evade law enforcement. That's more so like on the dark web and stuff like that, where they'll say, hey, if they said this, or sometimes even when we're on, they'll be like, oh, you must be a cop, because kids don't say that. So really it's our responsibility, like, and I don't know if you guys have heard, like, cops being online, of course they are, because that's where predators are. And of course we're undercover. Yes, that happens, like to catch a predator, we really do that. And a lot of it I thought was great is that I worked in a school district and I was in the high school, and that kept me up to date on what the kids were doing and what they were talking about. Because now we're taking phones and we're analyzing them forensically and stuff. And even some of like the drug talk back and forth, we're like, what does that mean? And so we have to find out. And it's forever changing. So imagine if we don't know, I don't really expect y'all to know. And even worse, the growing issue of kids being taught how to target, recruit, and groom other kids. I see this a lot in high schools, and maybe not here, but there will be one sometime. I saw it a lot where I was from, is girls getting money from guys online, and then the other girls figure out that, oh, well, how are you getting your hair done, your nails done, and new clothes? Well, I got it from this. Oh, well, I'm going to go online and I'm going to make a profile there too. So texting, like I said, has become the #1 issue among teens and at times even younger children. And one picture is not one picture. One picture is the gateway to more. Is if I can get one picture from you, then I'm just going to hold that over your head until you give me another one. And these images never go away. So I really, really stress this to kids, and sometimes I know schools don't like me to talk about sexting, so I'll go down to like nude images or inappropriate images, but they all know what I'm talking about. But I don't know how many times I've worked a case where I've been brought in with a girl or a boy, and they send out an image, and now their mental health is compromised, and now they may be suicidal, and it's because they know like the whole football team or the whole basketball team or half the school has their picture. And I literally have to sit there and tell them there is no way I can get that picture back. Like, there's just no way I can go collect 100 phones, and even if I did, it's still gonna be there. And I don't know how long it's gonna be there. Like, it may be there forever. It may be there, like, you may not even hear about this for 2 years, and then it may pop back up. Somebody kept it, somebody stored it, somebody put it in a cloud service, I don't know. And unfortunately, they just have to deal with it. And it's a really big issue. It leads to sextortion. They send one picture, and it's like, okay, I want another. If you don't, I'm gonna send it to your parents, I'm gonna send it to your friends, I'm gonna send it to everybody. And I'm just gonna hound you and hound you and hound you until you do it. And it leads to cyberbullying. So tips for parents. The pandemic was huge because everybody stayed at home. So everybody was on their laptops. Our cyber tips tripled. And we are knee-deep in them still. So I can't remember what our number was in Houston, but they tripled during the pandemic. And in Indiana, and I've seen some of our cyber tip numbers, they doubled. So during and since the pandemic, there's been a dramatic increase in the nation's youth online activities, because that's all they had to do. They couldn't go outside. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't go to activities. And this includes seeing a rise in self-generated sexually explicit material by children. And unfortunately, that is so very accurate. And that seems to be what we're combating even more so. It's like, not are they like predators online, you know, asking kids for inappropriate images, but they're self-generating this stuff from 8 years old and up. And I would say that's pretty accurate. I think the youngest one of mine was 10. Conversation starters that you can do. Have you ever been asked or pressured to send any nude images? Would you do it if somebody asked you to? Do you know kids that have sent naked pictures? How do you feel about that? Have you heard of kids sharing any naked pictures? What do you think about that? Have you ever received anything? What would you do if you ever did? Would you tell me? Would you be scared? What do you think happens if kids, what do you think happens to kids if a naked picture is found on somebody's phone? And I would say that it used to be that the laws protected children, and they still do for the most part, but it's such a big problem that they're going to, okay, what do we do? Like we have to do something. So what we came up with in Houston was we started ticketing. We started giving them tickets, taking the phone. I'd say, okay, now you have to go with your parent in front of the judge and tell the judge what you did. And then they would have to do that and pay a fine. And some of these kids, like their parents didn't have $150. $150. And I took their $900 cell phone. And then they have to go take a computer course. And then we have to wipe the phone and then give it back. But the problem with wiping the phone is it's in the cloud. So you just go get another phone and you log into your account and you download it and it's right there. So it's like, how do you get rid of this stuff? And the judges are like, they're at a loss too. Cyberbullying, it's more and more common. You guys know this. Parents need to look for signs of cyberbullying. Watching social media platforms. Look at your kids' phone. Look at their text messages. They're constant, it's like bullying back in our day, but now they can't get away from it. So they go home and it's in their pocket. It's like, you just can't get away. It used to be we could go home and you didn't have to worry about seeing that kid till tomorrow morning. You can't now. Report cyberbullying to local police. Make sure you guys do screenshots. Don't just delete it. Don't delete it because it's really hard to investigate when the screenshots haven't been taken and all the evidence has been deleted. And notify school officials. Like, A lot of the times, even our prosecutors down south will say, okay, well, this is, what's the school gonna do? Will the school do punishment? Will they do in-school suspension? Will they suspend the kid? Because if they do that, then we're not gonna prosecute. They try not to do that. They always talk about like the pipeline from school to prison, and they try to give them as much leeway as they can, but they typically don't like to do that. But notifying the school too, because they're here all day. So there's gonna be a problem here eventually. And I'm sure the school resource officer would like to know what's going on. School resource officers, if you don't know, are extremely busy. And a lot of times you guys don't even know what they're doing. But they are putting out fires like left and right. I had students come into my office all the time just to talk to me about what was going on. I would go to students and say, hey, I heard there's gonna be a fight today. What's gonna happen? Oh, well, so-and-so done like so-and-so. And so I would go get those kids and bring them into the office and say, okay, we're gonna get this out right now. And then if we can't come to an agreement, then you both are gonna go home. Top signs that suggest a child might be the target of cyberbullying. Obviously, appear sad, lonely, angry, worried, or upset. Unexpected changes, more so in friendship groups, and wanting to be around people or friends, staying home more. Changes in personality, clothing, the way they look, the way they dress, are they eating, and becoming more withdrawn or anxious. Evidence of self-harm. We see that a lot in schools. And if you aren't, if you think self-harm, look at arms, and then look at legs. Social media and mental health, they're like holding hands. Disrupted sleep patterns, I talked about that earlier. Fear of missing out when kids are seeing other kids doing stuff online and they can't, so they're not allowed to do it. Leads to depression and anxiety. I'm sure we have a good school counselor here. And so I always suggest that if the kids are having issues, they need to go talk to their school counselor. And a lot of times if the school resource officer is brought in, so is the school counselor, unless it's just purely criminal. And then if they're not in counseling, then I would either suggest that they go to counseling or see the school counselor, but not both. Sometimes it gets contradictory. Social media, poor academic performance, grades start to slide, poor physical health, not showering, stomach ache all the time, headaches, muscle tension, false sense of having a perfect appearance. That's huge. It used to be just for girls. We used to talk about a lot about girls. Now it's boys. It's both. So what should parents do? Make rules when your child gets his or her first cell phone. Just do it in the beginning. I had kids the other day raise their hand, and I said, whose parents gave you a phone, but they didn't tell you any rules? It was like half. And I said, okay, so they just said, like, here's a phone, like, have at it. It's like giving a kid a car and being like, learn to drive it. Because they both can kill you. They're both dangerous. Know the passcode to your kid's device. And I tell them that in high school too. The only two people that should know the password is your parents and you. Your BFF's not going to be your BFF forever, and your boyfriend's not going to be your boyfriend forever. So don't give them the code. And keep an open communication. I think if you take anything out of tonight, is that nothing can replace having a conversation. Nothing can replace learning, gaming with your kid. Nothing can replace time spent with your kid and talking about these kind of things. Because if you never have the conversation, they will never tell you. We would never be comfortable with a stranger taking our kid into a room that we couldn't see. So why are we letting it happen online and on their phones? Educate yourself with trending apps. Keep the evidence, don't share it. Please don't send it to your teacher. Like, I used to get that all the time, like, so-and-so got a new picture, let me forward it to you. No! Like, now it's on the server. Do not send that to their teachers or counselors via email. They don't want to see it either. So if it's already on the device, just bring the device. And make a report. You can make a report with the sheriff's office, you can make a report with the city, wherever you are. You can make a report with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children online, the cyber tip line. You can call the school counselor, you can call the principal, the coach, the teacher, whatever you need to do to start the process, whoever your kid likes the best. And some parental controls. I usually recommend, like iOS devices have more parental controls and restrictions than Androids. And usually too, like the two biggest phones out there right now are obviously Androids and iPhones. So we generally don't even talk about the others. Kaspersky Safe Kids is pretty good. And then I suggest bark.us. We used to promote that quite a bit in the South. And Norton's not too bad either. Some of them are expensive and some of them are free. But generally bark.us is really good. And I would suggest that. And it all just really depends on, I'll flip it back too so you can take a picture. It also depends too if you want like a tracking app. So some of them have the tracking on them and some of them don't. Okay, so just, I'm pretty close to the end. So some resources is, so National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, like, the big thing was, well, we've reported the pictures to the app, but the app will not take it down. Like, especially Twitter was terrible about it, which I don't even think it's called Twitter anymore. But they just wouldn't do it. And I even had a high school principal, like, they hacked his account, and they put his home address on there and his credit score and all kinds of stuff. And I kept calling them and like emailing them and they would just not take it down. And then some other like pornographic stuff. But now NCMEC has created takeitdown.ncmec.org and you actually just upload and put in the stuff and they're being a lot better with trying to get that removed as well, as best they can. Nofilter.org and amaze.org. There are some resources for, they call it sexual abuse material, but it's also just like nude images. And the one thing that I have heard, and I know people are trying to get better about is, and I'm not real sure about local resources, but resources with mental health and sexual assault stuff like that. So I would look into, and probably your school resource officer might know more about it since he works for the county. There's the Take It Down webpage for NCMEC. And then there's the cyber tip line, and you can just put, or you can just Google NCMEC, and that'll take you to the National Center for Missing and Exploited. They also have like Net Smarts and presentations and stuff like that on there that are all usually approved by schools. And the best foundation for protecting against cyber dangers is to be comfortable talking to your children about what's going on in their online life and their real life. And sometimes those are two very different things. You always see that these quiet kids in school who appear to have no friends are online and they're just like the king. It's because that's where they're comfortable. They're not comfortable in school. They're comfortable in their home. They're comfortable being quiet. They're comfortable being by themselves. And they can make themselves into anyone that they want to be. While monitoring your child's online and mobile activity with application helps, nothing will replace real communication. And then, did I touch on that question?
I don't know, you all probably know more than I do, but I understand that there's some controls where you can actually, maybe it's on a student's phone, can only contact the parent or somebody else, like during school hours, or they have access to 911. Is that a real thing?
And and then it just shuts off from certain times. I'm sure there is some app that, parental control, that you can make it only dial certain numbers during certain times where you can turn it on and off. What it is, I can't tell
We
you.
don't want to restrict kids from being able to contact their parents, but if a parent
Yeah.
would be able to shut out everything else, that would be really.
The one thing that I've seen, like most in high schools, is the Wi-Fi. Like, they will not allow certain apps to get through, so kids just download a VPN. It's like, I don't know how many times I'll just get on the kid's phone and I'm like, well, you're so smart, aren't you? You just got this little VPN on here. But also, too, it's like, what do you say to them? Because VPNs also hide your IP address or use another IP address. So if you're using it at home, it's like, that's kind of smart, because then nobody can get your home IP. So it's smart and sneaky at the same time. But kids generally do it at school because they want to be able to use Snapchat or whatever, and the Wi-Fi is the school's filtering it. Yeah. I forget what Snapchat was originally, but that's what happened.
Mine always wants my hotspot, so they can say, hey, I need your hotspot.
Yeah. So they're getting yours. Perfect. Anybody else have any questions? Does anybody want to see K9 Roger? Okay. Did he go get him? Yep.
So usually I pays attention to me when I have my food pouch on. So I listed a few things so you can kind of see the way that we work together. questions over the material or Can Roger? I do. What do you know about Be Real? About Be Real? So funny, I don't know a lot about it, but my cousin actually just texted me the other day and said that her daughter wanted it. And that she had looked on Bark, or had checked with Bark, and Bark had nothing good to say. So, I would say, unfortunately, within the last year and a half, I've focused primarily on like forensics, so I haven't really been in the school setting. And so I'm not up on that half. I wish I could tell you more, but probably be closer, right? Anything else?
Those of you that have middle school students, don't tell them about the dog. Because they'll want to see the dog first thing tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
She's gonna bring them out.
Yeah, I am going to the middle school tomorrow, I'll be talking to 6, 7, and 8. And then, yeah, I usually bring Roger in